Light was ugly, disgusting, worthless, and a lonely, miserable person. His friends left him one by one, and he was abandoned on a ruined farm, growing fruits and swinging a sword that was too heavy for him. The only thing keeping him alive was his small dream of becoming an adventurer. One day, in a moment of despair, he ate a second skill fruit, something that was supposed to kill him instantly. But the impossible happened. He didn't die. Instead, a hidden power erupted inside him, going beyond human limits. Still, he chose to hide it, letting everyone believe he was still a failure. While walking with his friend Lena to the sacred tree of skills, his heart pounded with excitement, hoping that this time luck would be on his side and that he would get a skill like dual swordsmanship or swift step. The long-awaited day finally arrived, the day his dream would begin. He looked at Lena and asked what skill she wanted. She hesitated, looking nervous, then said all she wanted was to stay by his side so they could become powerful adventurers together in one team. Worry was on her face because no one knew what skill they would get until they ate the fruit, and she was afraid that fate might separate them. But Light smiled warmly to reassure her, saying they would never part, and together they would become the strongest adventurers in the world. They entered the church where Light had gathered the fruits. But sadness took over him because this was far from the dream he wanted, to become a fruit farmer. This was not what he wished. To understand how this happened, the story takes us back 3 months earlier. At that time, the Holy Sister had explained that the skill given by the skill fruit could never be changed, and that no one was allowed to eat more than one fruit in their lifetime. She spoke sternly, warning that anyone who dared eat a second fruit would die instantly, because many heroes had tried such foolishness and only found death. Lena froze in fear, because she had never known about this rule. But Light tried to ease her worry, saying that every great adventurer got their strength from luck and a rare, wonderful skill. With shaking hands, Lena stepped forward and ate her fruit. Heat rushed through her body and a bright glow surrounded her. Her skill was revealed, Holy Sword Saint. Shock spread across the Holy Sister's face, because this was an extremely rare skill, one that appeared only once every 10 years, a blessing she had always dreamed of seeing given to someone. Then came Light's turn. He ate the fruit with eager hope, but his hope died in an instant when his skill appeared, Fruitmaster. Laughter. With cold indifference, the Holy Sister explained that this skill gave nothing more than the ability to harvest many fruits and make them grow faster. Light fell to the floor in ruin, his dream of adventure turning to ashes. Lena ran to him, trying to comfort him. She told him she would plant fruits with him, that together they would own a great farm. But her words upset the Holy Sister, who shouted in anger. The skill of the Holy Sword Saint must not be wasted. It is a rare gift and must be used to save the world. Without hesitation, she grabbed Lena and dragged her away by force, leading her toward the holy city. During that time, Light worked on his farm, using his skill to grow many fruits. He harvested large amounts and sold them for money. But whenever he looked at his belongings, he felt empty because his true dream had never been to live as a farmer. As he walked the streets, frustration grew inside him, especially when he saw a notice saying that Lena had advanced to the rank of S. A fire lit up inside his heart again, and he decided that he too would become an adventurer like her. From that moment, he trained without stopping, pushing himself until he collapsed on the ground. It was there that a young girl named Aya came to him, offering him water and telling him that their meal was ready. It was then revealed that Aya was an orphan, and the village elder had asked Light to take her in. From that day on, she lived with him, sharing the farm work and sitting with him at mealtimes. During one such meal, she asked about the harvest, and he said it was good, especially the so-called skill fruits. Confused by the name, she asked what he meant, and Light explained that it was a new kind of fruit he had started growing because he wanted to earn enough to buy a new sword. He added sternly that these fruits were stored in the crates behind her and that none were to be touched without his permission. Aya hesitated, lowering her voice with guilt. She had already used some of them in cooking dinner. Light froze. His mind instantly remembered the Holy Sister's warning that whoever dared to eat a second fruit would die. Pain surged through his body, and he collapsed, sure that his end had come. But time passed, and death did not take him. Instead, a new skill awoke inside him, Sword King. At that very moment, Aya too was struck by sudden pain. Her body was covered in a mysterious glow, and her own skill was revealed, Adventurer Appraisal. She checked Light's status and told him that his first skill, Fruitmaster, had given him immunity to the fruit's poisons, and that was why he had survived the second fruit. Not only had he survived, but it had also given him extra strength. The next day, the two of them set out for the Adventurers Guild. Light's heart was full of joy, because at last he was getting closer to his dream. The guild explained that great rewards awaited those who completed quests. But during his registration, Light bumped shoulders with a rude adventurer who mocked him as just a fruit seller, saying that the market now belonged to the guild. Light ignored him, which only made the man angrier, and he swung at Light with all his might. but Light blocked the blow easily, leaving the adventurer shocked. Soon after, Light and Aya went on their first mission, hunting slime monsters. Guided by Aya to their nests, Light killed them easily and collected proof. But suddenly, a voice cried out behind them. They rushed toward the sound only to find that same rude adventurer and his team fighting a huge ogre that they could not defeat. The adventurers ran away in fear. But the ogre turned its anger toward Light and Aya, charging at them with killing force. Light dodged its savage attacks, then drew his sword and jumped high into the air. Gathering all his strength, he unleashed a powerful cleaving strike, cutting the ogre in two. The beast fell dead, and the adventurers who saw it stood frozen in shock. Returning to the guild, Light delivered the slime proof and presented the ogre's horn as proof of its defeat. Everyone who saw it was filled with awe, realizing that he had not only saved himself and Aya, but had rescued them all. At that moment, the chatter in the guild hall was silenced by the entrance of the Holy Sword Party, and the eyes of all the adventurers, especially those of rank C, turned in awe. At the front appeared their leader, Grouse, known as the Man of Lightspeed, and beside him stood the tall giant, Eric, the fire mage, Sarum, and with them, the Holy Sword Saint, Lena. With desperate eagerness, Light rushed toward Lena, telling her that he had also become an adventurer and wanted to share with her everything that had happened. But Lena turned her face away, ignoring him completely, and coldly said that he must have mistaken her for someone else. Then she left. Light stood frozen, unable to believe it. Time passed, and Aya sat beside him, trying to ease his sadness. Then a cloaked figure approached, offering him a cup of water. At first, he didn't notice, but soon realized it was Lena herself. She apologized for her earlier behavior, explaining that being seen with him in front of Grouse would bring danger and that they must never be seen together. She asked him softly what he was doing there. He told her that both he and Aya had become adventurers, and he told her everything that had happened, how he had become the only person in the world to have 2 skills and how soon he would reach her level. But he couldn't stop himself from asking why she had ignored him so coldly. Lena sighed and told him that she was forced to work with the party because all of them had to obey the Holy Sister's orders. Light remembered the Holy Sister from the church, and when he asked if it was the same person, Lena said yes. To Light, it seemed strange, because the Holy Sword Party was supposed to be extraordinary heroes, not just tools following orders. It was then that Lena began to tell what had happened 2 months earlier. They had faced a huge serpent, and Grouse had ordered Sarum to burn it with fire. Sarum obeyed, but a strong wind carried the flames into the farmers' fields, burning them completely. Lena had tried to step in and save the villagers, but Grouse forbade her. Unable to stand by and do nothing, she saved their lives with her own hands, though their lands were lost forever. When she rushed to tell the Holy Sister, she was met with a cold reply. What matters is that the beast was killed. That is all that counts. Hearing this, Light begged her to leave the party and join his team instead, but she couldn't, and sadness filled her eyes. She apologized, then turned and left him behind. Afterward, Light returned to collect the reward for his first quest. There, Aya suggested that he challenge Grouse himself. Meanwhile, on the other side of the guild, Grouse was showing off in front of a crowd of admiring girls, telling them about his hunt of a fierce bear, how Sarum's flames had held the beast back, and how he himself had killed it with a single strike of his blade. He praised himself and his party, while looks of admiration appeared on the faces of those around him. But suddenly, a guild clerk entered, telling him about a complaint from the townspeople whose homes had been burned down because of their careless actions. He scoffed at her words and sneered, "Leave them to their misery, throw them out of the guild." And as he dismissed the matter with contempt, Light stormed in, demanding that he release Lena from his party. Grouse ignored him and laughed mockingly, then ordered the guild's guards to throw him out. But Sarum came close and whispered a warning. It would be better for Grouse to be careful, because if the Holy Sister learned of his behavior, she would never allow him to work as an adventurer in the city again. The next day, Lena was still troubled by Light's words, until she decided to face the matter directly. She went straight to Grouse and said that she would leave his party. At once, Sarum interrupted with a mocking tone. "Don't you realize we are the greatest and most powerful party?" But Lena replied coldly, "I don't like the way you do your work." With that, she turned her back and walked away. Grouse would not let her leave. He blocked her path and drew his sword. Lena grabbed her own blade to defend herself, but he only smiled cruelly and said, "Even with the speed and skill of the Holy Sword Saint, you could never defeat me. Put your sword away." Then, without warning, he hit her with a hard slap across the face, adding sharply, "I will not hear the word withdrawal from you again." As they left the guild, Light stood firmly in Grouse's way and declared with bold defiance, "I will not abandon Lena. I promised her that we would be in one team together." He drew his sword and challenged, "Fight me, and if I win, Lena will join my party." Grouse laughed in scorn, agreeing only to make an example of him before the crowd. But he set one condition. If Light lost, he would be banned from the guild forever. Lena panicked, begging him not to accept, because she knew defeating Grouse was impossible. Quickly, Aya used her appraisal skill, revealing that Grouse had the skill of light speed, a power that closed the gap between him and his enemies in an instant. Grouse showed no mercy. He struck with relentless fury, his attacks raining down on Light from every direction. Light struggled desperately to defend himself, but his enemy's speed and strength were overwhelming. Gathering his strength for a final blow, Grouse shattered Light's sword and moved toward Lena, forcing her to swear lifelong obedience to him in exchange for sparing Light's life. But rage burned inside Light's heart. Grabbing a magical broom from a nearby adventurer, he focused all his power on his enemy's weakness. With a sudden burst, he lunged forward and struck Grouse across the face, knocking him unconscious in front of everyone who watched. Turning toward Serum, Light spoke with cold severity. "If you so much as come near Lena or any member of my team, I will destroy you all." Before the eyes of the gathered adventurers, Lena officially announced her departure from Grouse's party and declared that she was joining Light's team. Together, they returned to the farm, harvesting fruits and selling them for good profit. But soon, a message from the Holy Sister reached Lena, summoning her at once to explain why she had left the Holy Sword Party. When she refused, the reply was merciless. She had been stripped of the position given by Grouse's party and had lost her rank of S. Not deterred, Lena decided to look for quests on her own, but the guild forced them into small, unimportant tasks, killing rats in the city's sewers and repairing the homes of the poor. Light understood that this was the Holy Sister's revenge, but Lena did not complain. Instead, she accepted with joy, because at last she could help those in need, even if she earned nothing. Together they traveled to the capital, dividing the work among themselves, gathering materials to restore the houses, and finishing the rat killing. When their work was done, they received only a small reward. Yet Lena's heart was filled with deep happiness. For the first time, she had been able to do something for the people. It was then that Light suggested they choose a name for their party. After a short discussion, they settled on the name Luxeria, meaning the incomplete light. There, the three of them promised that they would become the strongest adventurers in the city and that they would fight for the people. Elsewhere, the Holy Sister spoke with her assistant, who expressed her surprise. How could she assign a rank C quest to Light and Lena? The Holy Sister smiled wickedly and replied, "I have no desire to lose any member of the Holy Sword Party, but this mission is dangerous and also the perfect chance to get rid of them." The next day, Light and his companions arrived at the guild where the clerk told them about their new mission to investigate the abandoned manor of Count Montes. She explained that 2 months earlier, adventurers had been sent to measure the number of monsters inside, but they vanished one by one. Each time, the guild sent new adventurers to find out what happened to the missing ones. They too disappeared until the number of the lost had reached 18 warriors of rank A and B alike. She handed them a list of the missing names, and Lena froze as her eyes fell on 2 familiar ones, Bork and Shara, who had helped her in the early days of her adventuring life. Sadness covered her face. When Light asked what was known about this manor, she answered, "It was built 30 years ago by a man who made great fortune from his adventures. No one ever knew his true skill. But after his death, the manor became a city of ghosts." Lena, burning with anger, cried out in refusal, "High-ranked adventurers have failed there, and we have barely started our journey. How could they send us to such a place?" But the clerk answered firmly, "These are orders from high authorities within the guild, and you must carry them out." Unlike her, Light was eager, deciding boldly to take on the mission. They got on their horses and set off toward the manor. Fog made the path thick, blinding their sight. Suddenly, Aya's foot slipped on the mountainside, and as Light rushed to save her, they all tumbled down together. At the last moment, he drew his sword and lessened the force of their fall, so they landed on the ground unharmed. But they had no time to catch their breath. Monsters swarmed them from every direction. Light charged forward, cutting many down, but Lena cried out, "Stop! These are adventurers." Quickly, Aya used her appraisal and discovered that the missing adventurers had been turned into zombies that still had their archery skills. The large number of them forced Light back in shock at the thought of killing his fellow comrades. Before he realized it, one nearly sank its teeth into his flesh from behind. But Lena stepped in, killing it at the last moment, then quickly drove them toward the manor. They pushed open the doors only to find the inside filled with even more undead. With practiced skill, Lena aimed at their weaknesses, killing many with quick strikes. In the middle of the fight, one of the zombies lunged toward Aya, and again, it was Lena who struck it down just in time. Light stopped, his heart torn with regret. He had failed to protect her, and nearly lost her forever. He swore to himself that he would never again let her face danger alone. Then he urged that they go up to the second floor, because the number of zombies was far greater than the missing adventurers, and surely the cause must be above. They climbed the staircase carefully, and there before them appeared a mysterious witch, dancing with eerie grace as she watched them from afar. It was clear she was the one behind everything wrong with the manor. Suddenly, another horde of zombies came down on them, much stronger than the ones they had first faced. Aya quickly used her appraisal skill, discovering that these creatures had been tamed by someone. Light froze, confused, and unable to understand what was happening. At once, Lena explained that someone was controlling and directing them. Light searched the shadows with his eyes until he noticed thin threads attached to the zombies' bodies. Following them carefully, the group was led into a completely dark room. Lena whispered uneasily, "This is the head chamber." There appeared a mysterious girl who introduced herself as Dratana, carrying the title of the Black Swan. For a brief moment, Light felt relief at finally finding a living person. But before he could step toward her, waves of new zombies surged forward, filling the room. Aya quickly appraised her, and the truth was revealed. She had the skill of necromancy, giving her power over corpses and beasts alike. Light tried to offer cooperation, mentioning the mission they shared, but she refused without hesitation, declaring her purpose. She had come to kill him. Then, she ordered her zombies to attack. When he asked why, her reply was chillingly brief. She was following orders. Light and Lena fought the first wave, but soon, two figures appeared before them, Bork and Cher, Lena's companions from her earliest days. Lena hesitated, her hands shaking, because she knew their strength well and could not bring herself to raise her blade against them. Taking advantage of her hesitation, Dratana drove the zombies toward Aya. Light rushed to protect her, but soon found himself surrounded on all sides, while Lena remained locked in combat with Bork and Cher. Her resolve weakened as memories came back of how she had first met them at the guild, how they trained together until she rose to rank A. But in a decisive moment, she grabbed the threads of control, tore them apart, and struck them down with a sorrowful blow, freeing their souls from suffering. Meanwhile, Light continued to fight the endless dead. He turned to Aya, asking whether necromancy could create zombies from nothing. She shook her head, insisting it only controlled them. His confusion deepened. How then had so many appeared in this abandoned manner? Aya tried to appraise further, searching for the secret, but Dratana attacked her viciously. Enraged, Light ordered her to climb onto his shoulder so that he could protect her more closely. Elsewhere, the Holy Sister smiled with secret satisfaction. When her assistant asked why she was so pleased, she answered simply. She had seen a shadow pass across the moon. The scene returned to the manor. Light, carrying Aya on his shoulder, flew to the room's rafters while she focused her appraisal on the endless dead below. One by one, she examined their skills until at last her face turned pale. Among them, she had found one wielding the power of summoning. Her voice trembled as she revealed the truth. The zombie before them was none other than Count Montes himself. At that moment, Dratana realized that Light and his companions were getting dangerously close to the truth. Suddenly, from afar, Light saw a huge zombie moving toward them. Aya trembled in terror and screamed, "It is the soul harvester! Whoever it touches is instantly turned into a zombie." The monster charged at them with frightening speed, and Light jumped into the air to meet it. But he quickly realized that Dratana was controlling it as well. She revealed then that Count Montes had summoned this creature from the beginning, but he had paid a heavy price, because the summoning had twisted him into a zombie himself. After that, he used the harvester as his tool to turn adventurers into the undead. Light froze in shock, demanding, why would a successful adventurer like Montes choose such a path? Dratana only smiled with mocking disdain and replied that he knew far too little. She then spoke of forbidden skills, abilities so dangerous that simply having one made its wielder hated and attacked. Count Montes, she declared, had carried one of these, necromancy. At first, the people praised him as a hero, applauding his strength and giving him support. But as time passed, fear crept into their hearts whenever they saw him summon beasts or use his dreadful powers. Little by little, admiration turned to suspicion, and suspicion to hatred, until he was called a traitor and thrown out by everyone. The truth dawned on Light. Montes had retreated into the manor to live alone, far from the world that hated him. Dratana confirmed it, adding that the guild never stopped sending adventurers under the excuse of monster surveys, when in truth their mission was to kill him. Forced to defend himself, Montes struck back, turning them into zombies. Out of breath, Light whispered, why had no one in the guild ever told them such a truth? But Dratana cut him off with a sly smile. Enough talk, let us play a little. She gave her command, and the zombies rushed at them. Light braced himself, his thoughts racing that perhaps his immunity from the skill fruit was the hidden key that allowed him to gain unique powers. Perhaps this was the path that would lead him to become the strongest adventurer. The battle began, and soon they realized that the zombies repeated the same attacks mechanically, mere puppets bound to Dratana's will. Light summoned the power of the Sword King, soaring into the air and striking with a technique that forced Dratana's attention away for a brief moment. Taking the chance, Lena lunged at the Soul Harvester, and with the holy force of the Holy Sword Saint, she delivered a finishing blow that destroyed it completely. Standing before Dratana, Lena said she would not kill her because there were questions that needed answers. But before she could begin, Light charged at Count Montes, who still held threads of control, and struck with a final blow that ended his existence. Yet in that instant, Dratana moved quickly, forcing Montes to use his last bit of power. Before falling, he summoned a huge beast, one so large that its shadow filled the room, crouching before their eyes like a nightmare made real. In that moment, the zombies vanished, replaced by a huge dragon that lunged fiercely at Dratana. Lena trembled in shock, because she had never known such a beast lived here. Adventurers of rank C themselves avoided any fight with it, but Light tried to reassure her, saying that if they united their skills, they could overcome it. Yet Aya quickly warned them, explaining that the dragon's scales made its body impossible to cut with swords. Ignoring her warning, Light charged with all his might, only for his blade to break uselessly against the monster's hide. Realizing the fight was hopeless, Lena began to think of a way to retreat. At that moment, Aya brought out one of the skill fruits, urging Light to eat it, hoping it might give him new strength to save them. But in a sudden twist, a masked figure appeared from the shadows, grabbed Dratana, and vanished as if he had never been there. Lena tried to stop Light, warning that the act was dangerous. Even with his immunity to the fruit's poison, the skill might be forbidden. But Light was determined, insisting there was no other choice. He swallowed the fruit, and soon after Aya's appraisal revealed his new ability, insect resistance. Despair filled Light, and he asked if the dragon had any insect origin, but the answer was no. Determined, he demanded another fruit. Lena held off the dragon desperately to buy him time. He ate 2 fruits at once, yet gained only 2 useless skills, cat taming and sword hardness. His body shook with searing pain, his strength failing until he fell to the ground. Paralyzed, only one final chance remained, a 3rd fruit. As he reached for it, Lena's sword shattered under the dragon's strike. Her body was thrown violently across the room. Gathering the last of his will, Light ate the 3rd fruit and threw a large stone at the dragon to draw its anger away from Lena. When she asked the result, Aya announced with sudden joy, sleep dust, a power that forced everyone who breathed it into slumber. With grim resolve, Light moved toward the dragon, spreading the dust. Yet the beast roared in fury, thrashing wildly and tearing the room apart as it fought against the sleep. Aya shouted that the dust's range was only 3 meters. With no other choice, Light grabbed his broken sword, struck the ceiling above, and jumped onto the falling rubble to launch himself upward. Reaching the dragon's head, he released the dust directly into its mouth. The monster shuddered, then fell into a deep and heavy sleep. Lena quickly cut off a piece of its body to serve as proof of their victory, and together they fled before the manor crumbled to ruin around them. Getting on their horses, they rode toward the city. But exhaustion overcame Light, and as they reached the gates, he fell from his horse unconscious. Elsewhere, the masked figure delivered Dratana into the hands of the Holy Sister. She asked him what he thought of Light. His answer was cold and measured. I did not expect him to kill the dragon, yet I do not see him as a true threat. He will pose no real problem, not until he meets the one who has been foretold. The next morning, Aya gathered some fruits and went to help Lena prepare the meal. Lena smiled gratefully because she was taking on Light's duties while he still lay in bed. Soon enough, Light himself entered the kitchen with a tired grin, remarking, I didn't die, but I'm terribly bored. The two quickly lifted him back to his bed, insisting he continue to rest, though he protested that he was fine. But they were firm. His strength must first return. Before closing his eyes once more, he asked softly, Where are you going? I get. Lena explained that she was heading to the guild to learn the details of their last mission and the story behind the appearance of the evil dragon. He tried to get up to join them, but Aya assured him she would tell him everything in full detail. When Lena and Aya reached the guild, the clerk told them that the meeting arranged for them would not begin for another 2 hours. Lena then suggested that they register Aya formally as an adventurer, since they had time to spare. The idea surprised everyone because she was still so young. Discouraged, Aya whispered, I feel like I don't belong here. I have no tools, no weapons like the other adventurers. But Lena held her hands and reassured her, You have the appraisal skill. Without you, we could never have defeated the dragon. The hours passed quickly as they spent the time shopping. Aya entered a jewelry shop where fake goods filled the shelves. Yet with her skill, she spotted a real diamond among the fakes and bought it, planning to make a necklace. They also bought new clothes before returning to the guild. On their way to the meeting, Lena muttered under her breath, I will not reveal everything. What matters most is finding out the guild's role in all this. No one but them knew about our mission. Someone among them must be behind what happened. They entered the council room, where 4 of the guild's highest leaders stood waiting. Flower Hat, the head of investigations, Tigerbeard, master of security, Gravekeeper, chief of finance, and, lastly, the Holy Sister, supreme inspector and highest-ranking member who commanded the rest. Aya tried to appraise their skills, but she could see nothing. The Holy Sister asked Lena to begin her report of what had happened with the evil dragon. But Lena interrupted her, declaring, "Before I answer, about the girl we faced named Dratana, called the Black Swan, do any of you know her?" The Holy Sister denied any knowledge, remarking that thousands of adventurers passed before her eyes, and she could not remember every name. Flower Hat added that she would search the guild's records to be certain. The Holy Sister ignored the question, her tone turning grave. What matters now is locating the dragon and dealing with it. At that, Flower Hat interrupted, explaining that she had sent a scout bird to the manor, but it had found no trace of the dragon there. She added, "If we had a piece of its body, however, we could track it down and find its location." At that very moment, Lena brought out the dragon scale she had taken as proof. Before it could touch the table, Flower Hat lunged forward to grab it. But Lena stood firm, saying that she would hand it over only on one condition, that she be allowed to see the guild's records. After a tense silence, the 4 council members agreed, even the Holy Sister herself. Yet the latter clarified coldly that this did not mean she would personally take charge of the investigation. Flower Hat used her skills to examine the scale, then announced, 12 years ago, a girl gained the skill of necromancy after eating a skill fruit." Lena cut in quickly with a sharp question. "And who was responsible for the appraisal at that time?" The answer came without hesitation. "The Holy Sister." But the Holy Sister replied with icy calm, "I appraise more than 1,000 people each year. How could I possibly remember a single case from 12 years ago?" Her words were enough to plant seeds of doubt in Lena's heart. She began to realize there was something hidden, some unseen thread binding them all together. Before she could follow her thoughts further, the Holy Sister announced formally, "The party of Luxeria is hereby removed from the guild's records." Lena was shocked and demanded to know the reason. The answer came quickly. Grouse had filed a complaint, claiming that Light had stolen a member from his party by force. At that moment, Light entered the room, confident that the guild would honor him for killing the dragon. But his hope was crushed when he heard the verdict. He laughed bitterly and said, "And what of it? Even if you erase us from your records, the 3 of us will always remain Luxeria." Then, the Holy Sister used her appraisal skill on Light, and to her astonishment, what she saw made her attitude change completely. At once, her tone shifted, and she declared that they would be allowed to continue. More than that, she gave them a new mission to kill a rank sea monster with a large reward promised in return. Light accepted immediately, but Lena was left reeling, her suspicion deepening. She was certain this was nothing more than a trap. When the meeting ended, they received the mission details from the clerk. As the Holy Sister left, Lena leaned close and whispered a warning to Light. "She is plotting something, and you are helping her carry it out." Aya tried to appraise the Holy Sister's skills, but once again, nothing could be revealed, leaving her even more unsettled. Just then, Gravekeeper interrupted, saying that Light must pay a fine of 1,000 coins for entering the room armed. Light protested, explaining that the sword was broken, but the punishment only got worse. "Then the fine is 5,000 coins, because the sword belongs to the guild, and you have broken it." The clerk added that he would no longer be allowed to borrow another weapon, and that he must make one suited to his skills. Lena explained that making swords required a long time and effort, then decided to return to the city of her birth, hoping to find some way to help him. She trusted Aya to take care of Light in the meantime. Together, the two went to the craftsman's area to find a blacksmith's workshop, but they soon learned that most forges were under the Holy Sister's control, and none would help them. Rage burned inside Light at such betrayal until an old man pointed them toward the workshop of the legendary Smith Bolst, hidden in the city's western area. On their way, they saw a terrified girl running away as 3 young men chased her. She stumbled and fell, and one of them raised his hand to hit her, but Light blocked the blow. Angered, the thugs turned on him. One rushed forward to attack, but Light drew his broken sword, using his skill on it. He gripped it so hard that the weapon itself shattered in his hands. Fear took hold of the young men, and they ran away in panic, dragging each other along. She invited them to her home for a drink, but Light declined, saying he was in a hurry to reach the workshop of Bolst. She smiled lightly and said, "This is my home." She led them inside where, to their surprise, the place they had reached was none other than the very forge they had been looking for. Light looked around expecting to see craftsmen at work, but she answered simply, "There is no one else here. I do everything myself." The shock deepened when she revealed the truth that she herself was the legendary Smith Bolst. She showed them some of her wares, holding up a frying pan with 5 molds for pancakes, explaining that its price was 2,000 coins, but that she would sell it to them at half price for saving her life. Light blushed awkwardly, admitting that he did not even like pancakes, his confusion growing at the nature of the workshop, which looked far from a forge of blades. Monica laughed and explained, "It's true, I sell household tools." But when Light spotted an axe resting in the corner, he asked her to make him a new one, saying he was a farmer and needed a proper tool. She studied his hand carefully to take its measure, then set to work, heating and shaping the metal with precision. Aya, watching closely with her appraisal, discovered that Monica had the skill of supreme refinement, an ability of legendary quality that allowed her to polish and forge metals to perfection. In the end, she made him a pair of sturdy shears suited for his farm work. Light admired the quality of the craft, but could not stop himself from saying with all seriousness, "I want a strong sword." Monica fell silent for a moment, then shook her head. "That is impossible. I hate swords, and I will not forge one for you." Light was taken aback, demanding angrily why everyone had sent him to her if that were the case. She answered calmly, perhaps they meant the workshop next door. She led them there, where her father was at work. She asked him to forge a sword for Light, but he erupted in anger. "So, now you send customers to me because you refuse their requests while you waste your time making frying pans?" A fierce argument broke out between them, and Monica stormed away in fury. Her father apologized to Light but told him he was overwhelmed with orders, his work already booked for 6 months ahead, and could not help him. Light left the forge in despair, unsure what to do next. It was then that one of the workers approached him and introduced himself as Cain. Light recognized him at once, remembering his presence during the battle against Grouse. With bitterness, Light admitted that everyone connected to the Holy Sister now hated him because of that fight. But Cain smiled and said, "That is why I have come here, because the only ones not working under the Holy Sister's banner are Monica and her father." Unquote. When Light asked why Monica did not work alongside her father, Cain lowered his voice and revealed the truth. In the past, they worked together, and the Bolst family was known as legendary smiths. But years ago, their trade caravan was attacked by bandits. Everyone on board was killed, including Monica's grandfather. When the guilty ones were caught, it was discovered that all the swords they carried had been made by Monica's hand. From that day, her heart was scarred and filled with hatred for making swords. While they spoke inside the forge, a man named Zamo, one of the merchants of the Black Talon Syndicate, entered. He fixed his gaze on Light for a long moment and said, "I feel as though I have seen you before." At that instant, Monica's father stepped out and demanded sharply why the man had come. Zamo explained that he wanted a standing order of weapons to be delivered every week for an entire year. Cain protested immediately, pointing out that they could barely fill their current orders. Zamo only smiled with cruel amusement. "Then we shall turn to Monica. She is the true legendary smith, and we will force her to make them for us." Light stepped forward to stop him, insisting that Monica did not forge weapons at all. Zamo answered coldly, "We will persuade her by force." Faced with the threat, Monica's father was forced to agree against his will. Light understood then that the whole scheme was a pressure tactic to use Monica as leverage until her father gave in to their demands. Before leaving, the old man warned Light not to tell her anything of what had happened. That night, they ate together at Monica's home. The mood was calm until Monica, learning of Aya's appraisal skill, asked if she might work alongside her. Aya gently refused, saying she preferred to stay with Light on his adventures. Elsewhere, Zamo stood before the Holy Sister, requesting large quantities of weapons in a short amount of time. He agreed at once, and then mentioned that Light had been seen in the craftsman's area, suggesting he could be brought before her if she wished. She answered with a cold smile, "Send a spy to the security division. The important thing is that he come to me alive." After the meal, as Monica walked back toward the workshop, Zamo's men blocked her path and grabbed her. Cain ran to Light, holding Monica's glasses found at the forge door. Inside the case was a short note. "If you want her back, let Light come alone." As demanded by the note, Light went alone to the appointed place. Inside, Monica woke up to find herself chained. Her captors told her plainly that she was nothing more than bait to lure Light into their hands, and that once he was caught, they would keep her imprisoned for the rest of her life, forcing her to forge weapons for them without end. At that very moment, an explosion thundered through the room, and Light burst in without hesitation. They shot many projectiles and rushed at him all at once. But he only laughed calmly, then released the power of his sleep dust. With a single breath, the entire hall fell into slumber. Quickly, he broke Monica's chains and carried her away, returning her safely to her father, who hugged her with tears of gratitude. Meanwhile, Zamo was on his way to his men, fearing that if they killed Light, the Holy Sister would be angry with them. But he was shocked to find his men lying on the ground, fast asleep. Later, Monika's father apologized to Light for dragging him into such danger, admitting that he had relied far too much on the merchants of the Black Talon. He promised to cut ties with them, even if it cost him everything. Monika smiled and asked if that meant he would stop making swords. He answered firmly that he would not close the forge that had stood for 25 years, but that from now on, he would seek out only honorable clients. That night, they agreed to stay together under one roof. As evening fell, Light found Monika still awake and sat beside her. She told him how, as a child, she had made her first dagger, how her father had marveled at her gift, and how she improved her craft until she reached the legendary skill of supreme refinement. She spoke of the joy she felt in creating objects that brought happiness to people. But after her grandmother's death, everything changed. She discovered that some had used her swords for evil, and from that day, she turned away from forging weapons. Then she asked him honestly if he had ever killed someone. He answered that he had killed zombies to protect Aya. She admitted she no longer knew whether that was good or evil. But Light explained gently, swords are not evil in themselves. They are good if used in the right place for the right purpose. Elsewhere, Zamo's assistant woke up to find himself tied up, and before him stood Zamo, asking in angry confusion, "What happened?" The man stammered, "I don't know." Light stood before us, and suddenly we all fell asleep. Zamo smiled cunningly and ordered them to prepare a new plan, one that would finish Light at dawn. In the morning, Light woke to Aya's voice. They shared a simple breakfast, then noticed Monika was missing and set out carrying her meal to search for her. They found her in the fields. Light asked, astonished, "What are you doing here?" She smiled and replied, "The harvest will be abundant this year." Light then used his power to make the crops ripen faster, and Monika marveled that he had two skills at once. He explained that his fruitmaster gave him immunity to the fruit's poisons, allowing him to hold more than one skill. She could hardly believe it. Suddenly, loud knocking rang out, and they turned to see Zamo and his men storming the workshop, beating Monika's father and the workers without mercy. Light charged forward and told Zamo, "It seems you have not learned your lesson." He tried to cast his sleep dust on him, but Zamo protected himself with a shield of crackling lightning. Electric power attacked the forge as Zamo shot bolts, smashing and burning. Light ordered Monika to take Aya and run, then drew his sword and approached Zamo, saying, "That secret door you broke cost you dearly, so the wrecking of your workshop is payback for what you have done." Anger flared in Zamo, and he answered coldly that he would not free Monika unless she forged weapons in her legendary way because her father's swords had become poor over time. He shoved her to the ground and stepped on her viciously. Monika winced at the insult, because she and the other workers had poured their hearts into making tools. Zamo then ordered that Monika and Light come with him quietly to avoid more damage. Light answered with firm resolve, "I will hand you over to the authorities." He lunged at Zamo, grabbed a sword from the floor, and attacked with all his strength. But the lightning shield around Zamo blocked each blow, and the man fought back with crackling balls of electricity. He mocked, announcing, "To defeat you, I must stop your movement, but that is not fun. I want you to feel pain under my strikes." He threw more electric orbs, and Monika cried out for Aya to appraise them at once. Aya replied, "The spheres are made of iron." Quickly, Monika threw an iron skillet from her collection of household items into Light's hands and urged, "Grab it, catch those spheres." Aya. Indeed, the plan worked to stop the attacks. Light grabbed the magnetized orbs that had been shocking him with lightning and threw them away, regaining his balance and using his broken sword to block the endless strikes. Monika realized it could not last much longer. The blade was near its limit, and she decided then and there that she would forge him a new sword, no matter the cost. She also understood that he was not fighting for his own sake, but for hers. Grabbing Aya's hand, she pulled her quickly toward the forge. Meanwhile, Lena had arrived at the second city. The coachman guiding the carriage asked her, "Are you traveling alone, or have you come for the festival?" She answered sharply, "I am searching for someone." Back on the battlefield, Light pressed his attack against Zamo, but without success. Zamo shot a searing bolt of lightning aimed at Light's blade, expecting it to shatter instantly. Yet to his astonishment, it held firm. He struck again, lightning crackling through the air. But Light pressed forward, enduring the shocks as he took the chance that his next strike would be solid enough to pierce through. Staggering, half consumed by the pain, he launched his attack. But the lightning tore through him with brutal force, and he collapsed, his body weak and faint, clenching his grip anew. 10. He gathered his last strength and sent a gale of raging wind through his blade. The strike cut past Zamo's defenses, wounding him and pushing him backward. Furious, Zamo roared, "Enough games!" He summoned the lightning tiger, a huge beast covered in crackling sparks that wrapped around its body. The monster lunged at Light, grabbing his sword between its fangs, while Zamo struck from behind with devastating electric force. Light's body could take no more, and he fell unconscious to the ground. From a distance, Monica watched the scene unfold. Torn between saving her father and the workers, she saw them tied behind the gates of the forge, guarded by men ready to strike. Grabbing the shears Light had once made for her, she threw herself into the fight to distract the guards. They chased after her, trying to grab her, while Aya slipped inside to free Monica's father. But Zamo's assistant appeared suddenly, grabbing Aya from the other side. At that moment, Monica threw iron plates to the ground and used the power of her supreme refinement. The metal under the guards' feet melted into molten steel, pulling them down. With a second touch, she hardened it again, trapping them fast where they stood, unable to move, prisoners inside the very iron itself. Monica rushed into the forge, finding Zamo's assistant holding Aya. The young girl pointed quickly to a shiny stone on the ground, and in an instant, Monica appraised it, then threw it at her. The bright glare reflected sharply into everyone's eyes, forcing them shut, and the assistant fell unconscious from the blinding flash. At once, Monica's father jumped on him and tied him tightly with rope. Afterward, Monica asked her father's permission to use the forge to make a sword for Light. He answered firmly, "Do as you wish. You are one of the smiths of this house." Her father began melting the metal quickly, leaving her the task of shaping it. Memories surged within Monica of the days when she worked beside him, forging swords with pride. For a moment, she hesitated. Was what she was doing right, or was it wrong? Yet, she overcame her doubts and finished shaping the blade until it shone with radiant brilliance. The workers cheered because they had finished the forging in record time. They rushed out of the forge to find Light lying on the ground. Monica threw the sword to him, but Zamo sneered, "You are too late." At that decisive moment, Light grabbed the blade and rose once more. He called to Aya for a skill fruit, and she threw one toward him. But fate turned cruel, and it landed in Zamo's hand instead. All stared in shock as Zamo forced it upon Light, laughing. "Don't you know that those who eat more than one fruit die?" But the truth overturned the trap. Strength returned to Light instantly, and the mark of a new skill burned on him. He cried defiantly, "You have fallen into my trap. I am immune to the skill, fruit. I can eat as many as I wish and gain power without end." Aya appraised him at once, her voice trembling as she announced, "It is Flame Burst. He can release fire from his very hands." Zamo stumbled back in disbelief, then snarled in fury, "The Holy Sister was right to take interest in you, but I will stake my life on this battle." He summoned a huge lightning lion, its body covered in blazing sparks, while Light wrapped his blade in fire and charged with fearless might. The clash was titanic. Fire Dragon against Lightning Beast. The explosion shook the earth, flames and sparks covering the battlefield. Both warriors stood gasping after the strike. But then Zamo collapsed, unconscious, falling heavily to the ground. In Light's hands, the sword shattered once again. He turned to Monica, apologizing for breaking it, but she only smiled with fierce resolve and said, "I will forge you a new sword worthy of your strength." And she thanked him, because he had saved them all. Before Zamo's men could strike again, Tigerbeard, the guild's head of security, appeared, binding them with chains of air. He apologized to Monica's father for his delay, explaining that someone had interfered with the report's delivery. Her father answered with calm relief, "It is no matter. Light has already ended it." Tigerbeard smiled as his eyes fell on the young hero. "I know him. He is the rising brave who stood against the evil dragon." At that moment, a bird arrived at the forge carrying a message from Lena. She told them that she would soon reach the city of Dratana, though it would take some time, and she reassured them that she was safe. Monica looked at the letter and remarked, "So, this is Lena, the bearer of the Holy Sword's tale." Aya confirmed with a nod, saying she was part of their team, then quickly sent a reply to Lena, warning her that a member of the Black Swan had tried to kill them and that there was someone helping him. Meanwhile, Lena arrived at the city carrying only a single torn wing of the swan as proof. She traveled onward to the fairy capital, searching for a trace of Dratana. When she asked two men standing nearby about the name, they trembled at the mention and quickly backed away, leaving her puzzled. She tried questioning another young woman, but fear took hold of her as well, and soon everyone avoided her. It was then that she noticed a young man staring at her intently, as if carrying a message he wished to deliver. She followed after him, suspicion stirring in her heart. Was he a criminal? Perhaps sent by the Holy Sister to spy on her? If so, she decided, she would have to get rid of him. The trail led her into a narrow alley where the path suddenly ended and the young man vanished. Suddenly, he appeared behind her, throwing a rope that bound her tight. Instantly, Lena drew her sword and cut it apart, then struck at him fiercely. From a single clash, she realized his strength. He was surely of rank C. He spoke in a cold voice, saying that her use of the sword was fitting, but he would not allow someone who looked like a spy to run wild through the city. At that moment, another figure emerged from behind them. It was a woman who had clearly been waiting and hiding. Yet, to Lena's surprise, she introduced herself formally as Flower Hat. Then, she learned the truth. The young man was Yuan, one of her subordinates, and he had been tasked with investigating the matter of Dratana. Flower Hat told them that her mission too was to search for Dratana. Lena was taken aback and asked, "But how are you not in the Holy Sister's service?" Flower Hat smiled and replied, "I answer to no one. My task is gathering information alone." She revealed that Dratana's presence was linked to the mission to stop the evil dragon, and that the scale Lena had taken from the beast was still decaying. The only remaining proof was Dratana's involvement in its summoning. She warned plainly, if the dragon were to suddenly appear inside the city, it would be a disaster. Countless lives would be lost. Then she warned Lena not to question the townspeople directly, so as not to draw attention to herself. Flower Hat and Yuan prepared to leave, but Lena called after them and insisted, "I cannot gather this information alone. I will join you." After a moment's hesitation, they agreed, on one strict condition. She must not interfere with their methods. Lena accepted, and Yuan sneered. "Why let her join? She will be no use." Flower Hat answered calmly, "She is the only one who knows Dratana's features. That is a gift none of us have." Together, they went to a small restaurant. Flower Hat asked the owner for 3 plates of fresh fish caught the day before. Lena frowned. "Are we not on an investigation?" But Flower Hat said nothing. Instead, she led them to a secret passage under the building, where an informant waited. Yuan handed him a bag of coins and demanded the details of Dratana, her habits, her whereabouts. The informant spoke. She came from a wealthy house, but when she gained the skill of summoning spirits at the age of 6, everything changed. Her mother died suddenly. Their trade declined. Whispers spread that the family was cursed. Her father threw her out, blaming her forbidden power for the misfortune. Since then, the villagers shunned her and feared even to speak her name. Flower Hat asked, "And who first supported her?" He answered, "The Holy Sister. She took her into the sacred city herself." When Flower Hat asked about her current location, the informant replied, "She is in this city." Lena froze and whispered, "You mean she is still alive?" The man grinned wickedly and said, "Who said she had ever died?" A cold dread gripped Lena as she murmured, "Then who was the one who died in Count Montes' manor? Did she survive that place?" The informant leaned forward. "I can tell you exactly where she is, but that comes at a price." Yuan grabbed him by the throat, pressing a dagger to his chest, and growled, "The place, or you will not leave here alive." The man stammered in terror. In the theater quarter, she prepares for a fairy dance there. Meanwhile, Dratana sat inside her home as her attendant urged her to rest, warning of the pain in her injured foot. She refused with stubborn resolve. "The Holy Sister recommended me to be the dancer. I must be ready." Elsewhere, Yuan explained that the fairy dance was a sacred ritual held on the final day of the Festival of Fairies. He told how 1,000 years ago, the Fairy King had defended the city's lake from a monster attack, and since that time, the day became an annual celebration. Each year, one fairy was chosen to perform the dance. This year, the choice had fallen upon Dratana. They arrived at the training stage where rehearsals took place, but the guards blocked their way because they didn't have entry permits. Flower Hat smiled and told them they were fairies come to dance, accompanied by their personal musician. The guards let them pass. Lena whispered, "But I cannot dance," and Flower Hat laughed. "And do you think Yuan knows how to play?" Inside, Lena saw Dratana moving with the light, trembling grace of the fairy dance. Yuan stepped forward and bound her. Yet Lena stood stunned, asking herself, what connects a girl like her to the head of investigations? When Flower Hat demanded to know where the evil dragon had gone, Dratana replied coldly, "It was never under my control from the moment I summoned it." Flower Hat decided then to take her to the sacred city and use a spell tracking skill to trace the dragon's trail. But Dratana begged for 2 days, only enough time to perform the fairy dance she had dreamed of since childhood. Flower Hat refused sternly. Lena begged her to hear her out this once. Annoyed, Flower Hat reminded Lena of their agreement not to interfere with her methods. Turning to Dratana, she declared, "If you do not come with us willingly, we will take you by force in front of everyone." At that, Lena drew her sword, cut the bonds from Dratana, grabbed her hand, and ran from the stage. Yuan lunged to grab them again, but they slipped free. Because of the injury in her foot, Dratana stumbled along the way. Lena lifted her and used her jump skill, vaulting across rooftops to put distance between them and the pursuers. Yuan gave chase but suddenly lost their trail among the twisting alleys. Flower Hat ordered him to stay calm. "Don't worry, Dratana will not leave the city before the festival ends, and it will be easy to catch her then." On a small boat, a poet recited an ancient legend to his companions about the fairy king. He pointed toward a huge stone before them and explained that under it lay one of the king's followers, and that the festival of fairies was held each year in his honor. Then he whispered with warning, if that follower were ever to wake from his sleep, the world itself would collapse. Elsewhere, Light continued his relentless training. Aya tried to stop him, urging him to rest, but he refused with unyielding determination, bent on pushing his limits. Monica, meanwhile, remained focused on her forge, giving all her strength to crafting a new sword worthy of Light's growing power. At the same time, Flower Hat released flocks of birds across the night sky to search for Lena and Dratana, using her gift of night vision. But the birds soon returned trembling, as if they had seen the unthinkable. She grabbed a withered rose in her hand, used her skill to examine it, and recoiled with grave concern. Turning to Yuan, she said, "If what I fear is true, then our only hope lies in Lena and Dratana." Meanwhile, the two girls wandered the streets, looking for a place to hide until the time came for the fairy dance. Lena urged them to find somewhere far from Flower Hat's eyes, but Dratana stunned her by saying, "I will ask for the Holy Sister's help." Lena stopped cold and demanded sharply, "What is your connection to her? And why did you attack us in Count Montez's manor?" "I came here only to learn the reason," she pressed further. "I have learned everything about your childhood, but what I cannot understand is why you still use the bodies of Shera and Bork against us." Dratana gave no answer, only saying quietly, "You will understand everything yourself when the time comes." As they continued, two cheerful children, dressed in fairy costumes, stopped before them. But Dratana's joy turned to sorrow when their mother rushed over, dragging them away in anger, scolding them never to approach her as though she were a curse. Suddenly, screams tore through the streets and panic swept the crowd. Monsters appeared, flooding into the city. Lena jumped on one, cutting it down with a decisive strike, while Dratana gasped, "How did monsters enter here? Isn't the power of the fairy stone supposed to keep them out?" Then, before their eyes, a young girl nearly fell victim to a beast. Dratana unleashed her necromancy skill, taking control of the creatures and saving the child. But then they saw a boy with a horn on his head, surrounded by the same monsters. Lena rushed recklessly to his side, putting herself in danger. Dratana intervened again, pulling her back and warning, "Don't be so reckless again, or you will die." Yet the danger only deepened. A black fog swelled into the sky, and from it emerged a strange creature, the fog beast. Yuan dashed forward, binding it fast, and together with his allies, tore it apart. Afterward, Flower Hat ordered the citizens to flee quickly to the church of Fatio, saying that the place was too dangerous to stay. Lena and Dratana approached her in shock and asked, "Why the church specifically?" Flower Hat answered in short, firm words, "Because it has a defensive power, an aura of light that protects it from monsters and their attacks." Dratana froze, stunned. "But how? I have never heard of such a thing before." Thus, they all decided to head toward the fog, which they now realized was thickening in the middle of the lake. Flower Hat suggested they go there at once. Dratana turned to her in alarm. "Do you understand what you are asking?" Flower Hat answered steadily, "I do." So they boarded their small boat and set out. Flower Hat explained that the monsters were coming through a gate and that someone had deliberately opened it. Dratana cried in disbelief. "Impossible. The stone has always protected the city," Flower Hat replied. "There is a force that reverses its effect, a counterforce to its gravity. That is why I have decided to destroy the fairy stone." Dratana gasped. "That is the bearer of earth. It must not be touched." But Flower Hat answered sadly, "I have no choice. If I do not destroy it, I cannot save the city." Their words clashed fiercely, leaving Dratana stunned into silence, while even Lena wondered in confusion how such a thing could be destroyed. Suddenly, the poet who had earlier been on the boat appeared and said, "To destroy the stone on its day of festival is a danger beyond measure." Flower Hat turned sharply on him. "So, you are the cause of this?" The poet replied. "Wait one moment." Then he summoned from the gate a huge monster. Lena jumped on it and slashed its arm, but the sheer force of its blow sent her flying. She crashed down on the poet, crushing him until Yuan threw his ropes to pull her back onto the boat. The man's form changed, revealing his true self. He confessed that his name was Argos, and his mission was revenge and taking back the earth. That was the reason he had called forth the beast. Then with a roar, he summoned an army of monsters all at once and set them against the group. Flower Hat commanded her allies to destroy the stone quickly so that the summoning gates could be closed. Yuan dashed to hold back the beasts, but the water hindered him, and he struggled. Suddenly, everyone saw a unicorn transformed into a staircase of crystal that reached toward the fairy stone. Lena climbed quickly up the crystal steps. As the battle raged, Argos shone with furious power and swung at her, but she parried and struck back with a preemptive blow. In that instant, forbidden books were revealed. Flower Hat explained that there were 48 secret volumes sealed under the sacred city because of their danger, and that she alone could read them. She grabbed the Book of Ice and the Book of Stone, releasing their power on the monsters. She created a magical barrier that trapped them inside, then urged her comrades to hurry and destroy the stone. Lena searched desperately for another way, longing that light were there beside her, but no other path remained. Summoning all her strength and courage, she struck with everything she had, throwing her energy upon the stone. With a thunderous crack, the fairy stone shattered before their eyes, leaving all stunned at the sight of its ruin. Suddenly, huge gates tore open across the sky, and from them Argos summoned a terrifying force known as the King of the Sea. It was none other than the evil dragon itself. It came down on them with a torrent of fiery breath, the heat so fierce it weakened them all, before turning its anger upon the city, spreading ruin in its wake. Flower Hat assured them that the townspeople had been fully evacuated, yet Dratana's eyes filled with tears as she saw the fairy stage covered in flames, her childhood dream turned to ashes. Lena looked at her with firm resolve and urged her to rise again. With clenched fists, Dratana steadied herself once more. Elsewhere, an old elder whispered a desperate prayer that the church still stood and that the fairy stone might protect them. Beside him, a young child's voice rang clear, saying she had read of this very moment in an ancient book, the tale of the fairy king's battle with the beasts, and that a savior would appear at the decisive hour. On the battlefield, Flower Hat struggled to keep her magical cage around the monsters, ordering Yuan to strike down the remnants, but her strength soon failed, and she fell to her knees. Argos laughed in cruel mockery, continuing his merciless destruction of the city. Dratana turned to Lena and cried, "We cannot win unless we unite all four of us." Lena raised her sword and answered with resolve, "Hold the dragon for 5 seconds only, and I will finish this." Dratana unleashed her necromancy, summoning the fallen beasts to her side. She merged them into a towering giant that grabbed the dragon, holding it for precious seconds. In that instant, Lena took her chance, darting forward like lightning, and with every ounce of strength, drove her blade deep into the dragon's neck. For a heartbeat, she thought it was over, until Argos's laughter thundered through the air. The beast rose again, as if untouched, its eyes blazing with fury. Flower Hat shouted a dire warning, "Be careful, this one has not fallen yet." But before her words were finished, a new wave of fire erupted from the dragon's mouth, stronger than any before, shaking the ground beneath them as if the world itself would collapse. In that moment, Argos reshaped the dragon, standing defiantly and warning them never to dare oppose his destruction of the city. He unleashed a storm of huge fireballs. Within seconds, Flower Hat realized the truth. Argos had used his skill to bring the dragon back to life. Desperately, she searched through her magical books, her fingers flipping furiously through their pages until she uncovered the secret. What Argos used was not mere summoning, but the forbidden art of possession. To kill the dragon, they must first defeat Argos himself. Lena called to her comrades, "One must distract him while she strikes his neck." As Flower Hat analyzed the battle, she saw that the summoning of dragon and beasts was powered not by ordinary skill, but by a force altogether different. Realizing her danger, Argos ordered the dragon to unleash a devastating blow on her. She countered with fire and stone, but his power overwhelmed hers. Yuan jumped in, saving her at the last moment, pulling her clear of the center and leaving the battlefield to Dratana and Lena. The dragon roared and breathed its lethal flame. Dratana flew upward, calling upon her necromancy, but her effort failed to bind it. Lena rushed to her aid, casting a bright barrier that blocked 2 blasts in a row. Yet, even that collapsed before the beast's might. Despair closed in on them. All felt the battle was lost, but Lena refused to surrender. She strode to the center of the field, her spirit blazing, and used the stance of the Holy Sword Saint. In that moment, a strange glow covered her. She found herself beside the unicorn child, seeing a vision of legend. The Fairy King himself, battling the beast that once tried to destroy the city. She returned to reality, with shining wings spread. New strength flowed through her veins. She launched at the dragon, her glowing blade cutting off its first arm in a single stroke, leaving Dratana astonished, and the Holy Sister watching in awe. Dratana declared with trembling voice that after every calamity, the Fairy King granted wings and the sword of purification to a chosen one. Argos shouted in defiance, "It is useless." But before he could act, Lena struck again, cutting off the dragon's second arm. At Flower Hat's command, Yuan threw her back into the heart of the fight. With relentless fury, Lena pressed the attack, her new power pushing the dragon backward. In desperation, Argos turned from her, focusing instead on his true target, the city's church. He threw the dragon forward to break its final protective barrier. But Lena stood in his path, stopping the strike, and with every ounce of her courage, she drove her shining blade into the beast's core. With a thunderous cry, the dragon fell, its body collapsing. The terror ended at last. At that moment, Lena stood before Argos and demanded the reason for his actions. He twisted his lips into a crooked smile, muttering to himself that she must have been a pawn of the Holy Sister, the one who had promised him help, only now to betray him. Rage covered his face as he hissed, "I should never have trusted such a manipulative woman." He cast a dark spell and in an instant vanished, fleeing into the shadows, leaving behind only a grim promise, "I will return again." The glow around Lena faded, and the power given by the unicorn child slipped from her grasp. Exhausted, she sat on the ground, whispering her thanks for his help. Flower Hat approached, tending to her wounds as well as Dratana's. Trembling with humility, Dratana said softly, "All credit is yours, Lena. I did nothing." But Lena smiled gently and replied, "I could never have won alone. You were my strength beside me." Meanwhile, Flower Hat revealed to Lena and Dratana that Argos had lost the talisman from which he drew his power. It belonged to the ancient civilization of Zelum. Each symbol on it marked a skill tied to Argos. Only one such relic existed in the world. When Lena asked about the upside-down bat symbol, Flower Hat explained it was called the Instrument of Reversal, the cause of everything. Suddenly, a bright light burst out from the fairy stone. From the glow appeared the Fairy King himself, naming himself Oel. He declared that it was he who had given Lena her power through Siren, the unicorn who had been sealed inside the stone for centuries. Lena asked in awe, "And what were those visions I saw in the middle of the battle?" Oel answered, "What you saw were not illusions, but true memories. Our battles against the beasts, our sacrifices to protect this land. Long ago, the earth itself was reduced to ash only to heal again after centuries." He explained that after those wars, one among them had to remain sealed inside the stone to prevent the disaster from happening again. Siren had volunteered, watching over the world from within, until the recent danger made him send a piece of himself to help Lena. All were moved by the depth of such sacrifice. Before leaving, Oel asked that they perform the fairy dance in honor of Siren, because it was the joy he loved most. Dratana agreed at once, exclaiming that she and Lena would perform it together. But Lena, shy and hesitant, protested. "But I cannot dance." Dratana smiled gently. "It is simple. I will teach you." The following night, they stood before the people of the city, side by side, performing the dance. Hearts swelled with joy, eyes filled with tears. The townspeople's view of Dratana changed at last, as they remembered how she had risked herself to protect them. At the finale, Lena stepped down from the stage to watch, leaving Dratana to complete the dance alone. In his final vision, Oel appeared once more, offering thanks for her beautiful performance. Then he turned to Lena and said, "Take care of Siren. Let him see the world. Soon your wings and the sword of purification will fade, but his memory will remain within you." With his last words, he vanished with the fading light, and Lena suddenly fell unconscious on the ground. After some time, Lena woke from her faint and returned to the rest of the group. There, the innkeeper thanked her for helping them defeat the dragon, insisting that the credit belonged to her and to the Holy Sister who had sent them weapons at the critical moment. Lena and Flower Hat froze in shock, asking him again to be sure. He nodded. Yes, she sent them through the merchants of the Blackbird. Dratana raised her eyebrows in surprise. What is strange about that? The Holy Sister has always been kind to us. But Flower Hat replied firmly, "The distance from the sacred city to this place is far too great. Even if news traveled quickly, it would have been impossible for the weapons to arrive in time unless the Holy Sister had known beforehand what would happen." Yuan interrupted. You mean she knew the fairy stone would be destroyed? Flower Hat confirmed. Exactly. Then she asked them, do any of you truly know the Holy Sister's skill? Lena answered, evaluation. Flower Hat laughed bitterly. No, clairvoyance. A silence fell over them until she continued. Yes, she sees the future. When she told you that you were the saint of the sword after eating the skill fruit, she was not measuring your talent. She was seeing your future. Do you think the dragon's appearance and the destruction of the fairy stone were coincidence? Who is the common thread between it all? Was it not Lena and Dratana? Dratana refused to believe her words, clinging to her loyalty to the Holy Sister. Yet, Flower Hat told her plainly that she would be going with Lena to another site of investigation. Grief weighed on Lena's heart as she thought of all the years spent in the Holy Sister's service. A woman who had seen everything, hidden everything, and plotted only to erase light. Still, Lena agreed to follow Flower Hat. Dratana at first refused to betray the Holy Sister, but at last accepted to go with them, determined to learn the truth with her own eyes. Before their departure, Lena insisted on first helping to rebuild the ruined city and contacting Light and Aya. At that time, Light continued his relentless training with the new Flame Burst skill, determined to master it no matter the cost. As he trained, a glowing orb delivered a message from Lena. They spoke at length, and he told her everything that had happened, saying he still waited for his new sword. She replied that she was busy and could not return yet, but once finished, she would return immediately. He told her, then tomorrow, I will take on a rank S quest while I wait for you. Meanwhile, the Holy Sister spoke to her attendant, satisfied that events in the fairy city had unfolded exactly as she had seen. Only one matter remained, the elimination of Light. The attendant asked nervously, will his existence change your plans for the future? The Holy Sister commanded her to keep this secret sealed. And so, the first season of Light's story comes to an end. If you enjoyed this tale, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you will be the first to see Season 2. Farewell, until next time.